when you say there were possible conflicts of interest, the nexus there is that they traded stocks in industries where the members served on committees where those industries' interests might reasonably or did actually come into debate. Am I right?
That's right. That was our framing, Tyler, because some would argue that members of Congress are constantly privy to privileged information, non-public information that could potentially move a stock. We wanted to frame it a little more narrowly, in which we looked at people's committee assignments, as you said, and we then said to ourselves, okay, of the stocks they or their immediate family members are reporting, buying, selling, and this could include bonds and commodities and other things too, would a reasonable person seem to think that these stocks or the sectors they're in could be affected by that committee work? So example, if you're on the Armed Services Committee and you're trading Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, or Northrop Grumman, a reasonable person could assume that you might be in the information flow of government behavior or even updates from the company and things like this based on your committee assignment.
Kate, it is very interesting. You said 97 members of Congress out of 535 people are trading in a way that could be regarded as conflicted. But you also make the point in the article that they are still not allowed to do anything that would be legally considered insider trading. They cannot trade on material information they have that the public does not. Is that true?
That's totally true, Courtney, and I'm glad you pointed that out. I mean, it's interesting because members of Congress are not allowed to trade on non-public information any more than you and I are, which we're not. And in the Stock Act in 2012, that was codified. I think part of the reason the clarification was needed is that under the Constitution, Congress does enjoy some legal protections that regular folks do not. It's called the Speech and Debate Clause, and things they're doing in line with their government work are potentially shielded from litigation. But having said that, yeah, I mean, there are plenty of situations here that at the very least might give one pause or make one think there could be potential conflicts. And that's the kind of thing that the members, at least who are pushing for reforms of this, are exercised about. They don't like the optics of it, and they feel that it erodes trust in Congress.
Yeah, and one thing we should point out here as we look at Senator Tuberville of Alabama, I believe, is the idea that this is not just stock trades. These could be trades in commodities or futures or other markets as well. That's one thing. Did you, as you did this research, Kate, did you find that any members who were making these kinds of trades, who have been way out front in decrying the practice? I know that Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts has been very outspoken about this. She doesn't trade stocks, does she, or does she?
No. I mean, and most of the folks who have been outspoken about this practice and have said it needs to be banned or restricted do not trade themselves. Now, there are some exceptions to that. Dean Phillips of Minnesota has been a co-signer on one of these bills. I think it's Spanberger's bill. And he did trade somewhat actively. You'll see him if you look at our table, because he was trading some stocks, a year or two ago, probably 2 to 3 years ago, now that I think about it, that might have dovetailed with his committee work. But he has since gone through a process of entering into a blind trust so that he doesn't know how his assets are being traded and doesn't have input or get output. Some are going in that direction. Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, who I think is on your air a fair amount, has traded actively through a broker, an account that I think is jointly held with his spouse. I'm sorry, when I say traded actively, I mean the broker trades actively on his behalf. And he would explain it as to say there's a wall between my spouse and I and what we know about the portfolio and that broker and what they're doing. It's not a blind trust, but I don't get into it day to day. But he also is in the process of going into a blind trust and also has co-sponsored some of this legislation. So
very interesting.
I think most of those people don't do it or are in the process of putting more kind of protections in place.